Hello, Canucks fans. Welcome back to another episode of Canucks Conversation, which is brought to you by Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code NATION when you sign up for an account. My name is David Wargelli. I am joined, as always, by Harman Dial. Our technical producer, the man at the controls, is Jacob Lazar. Man, I had a sneezing fit right before we went to air, so I don't know if anybody could hear it, but I don't think my mic was on, right, Jacob? Like nobody that didn't go to air. That I was just sneezing my head off right before we went
No,
on.
and the timing was perfect that you finished sneezing right before the intro ended.
Can you see me? Like, could you
No.
see me sneezing? Okay,
No.
perfect. With that, let's get the show started, Harm. Let's get this show on the road. We're going to be joined in about 15 minutes' time by Arun Srinivasan, who is the managing editor of theleafsnation.com, which is the only site, if you're ever going to read about the Leafs, that's the only site you should be going to. Book it. He's going to be joining us to preview tomorrow's game between the Canucks and Leafs. We've got a few questions for Arun, so it's going to be a lot of fun. I don't think you could categorize last night's Canucks game as a lot of fun, Harman. Could you?
That was a brutal watch, especially in the wake of the Colorado game, which was so entertaining. It was so fast, arguably the most fun game of the season. So to follow that Colorado game up with a contest where they got outplayed for most of the night by the San Jose Sharks was brutal. There's no other way to put it. Now, of course, they got the 2 points. Massive shout out to Thatcher Demko. We're going to talk about his performance, I'm sure. But I remember one point in the third period, Nils Aman threw a big hit, and it like jolted me awake. And put it this way: if Nils Aman throwing a big hit is one of the most entertaining parts of an NHL hockey game, that is not a good endorsement of that game.
Or of your first line center?
Absolutely.
Let's talk about him. Let's start there. Let's start talking about Elias Pettersson. Right before we went to air, I said to you, like, that had to have been the lowest low point that we've seen for Elias Pettersson in a while. Obviously, people were circulating clips today of, he hit the side of the net against Nashville in the playoffs and looked so dejected. Like, last night had to have been one of the lowest points for Elias Pettersson. It's been 4 games without JT Miller. He's got 1 assist, and it came in the Dallas game. 3 shots in that game, then 1 shot in every game after that. He didn't have a shot on goal last night. His stat line is just zeros. He pulled the Louis Eriksson off last night. Just nothing happened when he was on the ice. So much so, you were telling me they didn't even get a chance on goal at 5-on-5 with him on the ice?
Yeah, he played nearly 13 minutes at 5-on-5. The Canucks did not generate a single shot on goal with Pettersson on the ice against the San Jose Sharks of all
It's the Sharks. It's
like
the Sharks.
That's the crazy part, right? Is okay, we'll have these stretches even going back to since last year's All-Star break. And even when Pettersson's been slumping, it's been okay, San Jose is on the calendar, Chicago's on the calendar, Buffalo, Montreal, one of these bottom feeder teams. And okay, he gets a point or two. And you're thinking, ooh, is this a glimmer of hope? Not quite, is he back? But, could this be a building block? We don't even get that now at this stage. And it was really painful watching him on the power play. You know you're at a low point when you get bumped off the top unit for Pia Suter, when your first unit does not have JT Miller on it and does not have Quinn Hughes.
And I wrote that instant reaction. Look, like, Tocchet didn't put Pia Suter on there because he thinks that he's going to give them a better chance to score on the power play. Right? Like, that's not why Tocchet did that. He didn't send a message. No.
Both. Like,
it's both, because Pettersson wasn't going. I get that. But most of all, it's to send a message to your star player that, hey, we need a lot more out of you than we've gotten so far. Like, I don't even know what to say at this point. He played with the 2 best wingers in DeBrusk and Besser. That didn't work, so they changed up the wingers again. Like, the wingers' excuse is gone. I'm sorry, but as much as I talk about, I think there's something going on with the knee thing still. Like, that shouldn't stop you from shooting the puck. Not even shooting it hard, just like attempting to shoot the puck. It got so bad that last night, San Jose, when the Canucks were on the power play, they were giving Pettersson the shooting option. They're like, you're not going to shoot? We know you're not going to shoot. He's turning into Connor Garland on the power play right now, where teams are just like, we know you're not a shooting threat, so we're not going to bother. Like, that's bleak, man. That's really bleak.
He's deferring too much. He looks flat-footed and stationary on the power play. Just no killer instinct, right? Where's that killer instinct? Again, how many times when you go through the highlights of his rookie season, his sophomore season, the 102-point campaign he had, the killer instinct that he had when he possessed the puck in prime scoring locations was one of his best assets. He has, you know, that meme of the original meme of the dog in you, but then there's like that nervous dog too. That's what Pettersson is like right now. He just looks nervous on the power play. There was one play where Garland, I think this was either the third or fourth power play opportunity, the one where they were finally getting shots on goal. Garland snapped an east-west pass across to Pettersson. Pettersson's coming downhill in a pretty prime scoring area, and he passed it off instead of shooting it. And not only did he defer, but the pass didn't work either. And it's just like moments like that. And even statistically, this season, his power play shot attempts are down 35% compared to 2 years ago.
What's wrong with him? Like, what's your theory? Everybody's got a theory. I'll give you mine because I thought about this for the past 24 hours. I've really thought about this. And I've said this for a while this season, so it's not going to sound like new information. But I, right away from training camp, pointed out that the first day Pettersson was there, we asked about the knee tendonitis, and he said, yeah, I had to train around it in the off season, and it's just one of those nagging things that won't go away. And then he was quick to say, oh, but I'm good now. Okay, so I was a little skeptical about that. But even if you buy into the idea, and of course, like, people are already pointing out, like, well, Alvin says he's not injured. Pettersson says he's not injured. Okay, they said that about the wrist. Then he comes out and says, yeah, actually, I was dealing with something. Said it all last season. I'm not dealing with anything. I'm fine. I'm good to go. Team says, yep, he's fine. Then he comes out and says he has the tendonitis issue. Players don't do that during the season. We know this. We don't need to rehash this, okay? So let's say, even if you believe that he's dealing with knee tendonitis, like, knee tendonitis doesn't cause you to do the things that we're seeing Elias Pettersson do right now. I think it may have started the trajectory of him just losing all of his confidence, because right now I just look at it and see a player that just has zero confidence. Zero confidence to do anything with the puck. Zero confidence to go hard into a board battle. Like, it's just weird right now watching Elias Pettersson play. And again, I bring up board battles because last night it was evident, but for the most part, like, he's played pretty good defense, and he has been pretty good at throwing his weight around and doing the things like that he can control. But where it's the big moments, and especially when he's got the puck on his stick, that's when he's started to really not look like himself. And it's been a full year now. Like, it's been a full year that we've seen this from Elias Pettersson, and it is concerning. It is concerning, to say the least. That's my theory, though. He's probably still dealing with something with his knee, but again, that's not a silver bullet. Like, oh, go get your knee fixed and everything's fine. I don't think that's true. Again, we see the NHL Edge skating data, and we see that it's way down and that he's just way slower. And I mean, eye test, data, whatever you want to use, tells you that. And yeah, that's going to spark a lot of things for him. But right now, it feels like there's a lot going on with Elias Pettersson that we don't know.
It's just strange too, because his shooting is the other part of it as well. Not just the attempts, but when he has shot the puck this year, his velocity's been down quite notably. And what does that have to do with? I don't know. And that's why it's difficult from the outside to try and assess what's gone wrong. I don't think it's one thing, but it's just so strange watching a player that when he's at his best has so much swagger to his game, has so much precision accuracy, was an elite shooter. I mean, JPAT tweeted out at the All-Star game a couple of years ago how he won the hardest shot contest. Where's that player? Where's that shot, right? So one adjustment that I'd like to maybe see, and to be quite clear, I don't think there's an obvious answer for how to get Elias Pettersson going. I don't think there's like a magic fix here, but one adjustment that might be worth trying is I'd like to see Nils Höglander get an opportunity with Pettersson. Again, I don't think that
January.
I don't think that fixes Pettersson by any stretch of the imagination, but I was looking at Höglander's numbers since the holiday break. So you're talking about a 20-game sample. Canucks have controlled 61% of high danger chances with Höglander on the ice at 5-on-5, which is the best mark among their forwards. And it's not just, they're controlling play, they're controlling shots. They've outscored teams 8-1 during Höglander's 5-on-5 shifts. So they've been pummeling teams on the scoreboard. Höglander is driving offense. Pettersson in that same time frame has some of the worst underlying metrics on this team. And so you might say, okay, great. So Höglander looks good by the eye test. He's driving play. The analytics look good. Where's the bottom line been? Because clearly the production hasn't quite been there yet for him either. But even with that context in mind, 6 points in his last 18 games, that's not horrible considering he's been playing 9 to 10 minutes most nights, playing on the fourth line. Plus, it's not like you have any of your other wingers really going.
Yeah, I agree. He's been good
I think
since
it's worth a
January.
shot.
Yep, absolutely. I agree. Not a coincidence. Linus Karlsson and Nils Höglander looked like Pettersson's best wingers over this time that we've been talking about him. Let's get to more on Pettersson later. I have another theory that I want to throw out there. I did want to get to the Demko part of this conversation, the poll question, then I want to bring in Arun, talk about tomorrow's game against the Leafs. But Thatcher Demko was a positive story in that game. Harman, his last few starts have been phenomenal. He's really seemed to turn a corner. Again, almost had the second shutout. Jeff Patterson tweeted out Demko's last 4 games, a 3-1 record, a .952 save percentage, 100 saves on 105 shots, 1 shutout, and it could have been 2 shutouts. But Philip Hedl was a rare mistake. We'll talk about that. We'll break that down after. But Thatcher Demko looked phenomenal again last night. What did you think of his game?
His movement looks explosive. He's confidently been looking around screens and traffic as well. I believe he's found a rhythm. Even on Toffoli's tying goal, Thatcher's instincts and how quickly he reacted to stop the first one and the second one. It took Toffoli 3 grade A chances for him to finally bury the puck. He's been stepping up in big moments. Will Smith had a couple breakaways, the first of which required a good save by Demko. He stopped Barclay Goodrow a couple times point blank. Celebrini had a glorious 2-on-1 chance in overtime. His movement looks crisp. I like the way that he's anticipating and reading the play. And again, just little things like the decisiveness with which he's fighting through traffic, fighting through screens to track pucks. He looks really dialed in right now, and that's the biggest positive for this team during this 5-1-1 stretch.
A little victory lap for me because I was saying it from the start. You don't see many people right now with the they got to extend Lankinen and trade Demko. Just pump the brakes, folks. I was saying it for a while. Demko just needs to get his timing back. Looks like he's gotten that timing back. So let's bring in our poll question, which is brought to you by HSBC Rugby Sevens, where high caliber rugby and the Ultimate Party weekend collide. SVNS is Western Canada's largest sporting event, and this year is the 10th anniversary of the event. Catch both men's and women's teams from a number of countries, including Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Canada, Japan, New Zealand, Kenya, South Africa, Spain, USA, Japan, Fiji, France, so many in there. From February 21st, 23rd, BC Place is the place to be. Grab your friends in your best costume and come on down for the best party in town. Single day tickets are on sale now. Friday tickets are starting from just $50. So go get them. HSBC World Rugby Sevens. Okay, our poll question was about Thatcher Demko, and we asked a very simple question. Do you think Thatcher Demko is back? 70.4% of voters say yes, 29.6% say not quite yet, and I didn't even leave an option of like, no, he's never coming back. Like, these are at the worst, these are flashes of him being back. I think he's back, though. Like, I think you can just bank on Demko being himself for the rest of the season.
I hope so. I mean, goaltenders is always tough to predict. They're volatile. They go through highs and lows. But I think the turning point, and I believe Ray Ferraro sort of pointed it out too during the Colorado game, was that second period sequence on the shift where he made 3 or 4 just unbelievable saves. And just a sequence like that, I think – confidence-wise, I mean, I can't speak for Thatcher, but putting myself in his shoes, that type of elite sequence gives you that swagger and confidence back with your game, which so much of goaltending is mental. It's sort of like being a pitcher in baseball, right? Yeah, there are technical elements. Yeah, there are components like reading the play, but so much of it is mental too. And when you have that confidence, everything comes instinctually, everything comes easy, as opposed to when you're fighting it, when you don't have that confidence, like Demko presumably didn't through his first dozen starts or so, then it feels like you're fighting an uphill battle with everything that you're doing. You're overthinking certain things. You might be trying to compensate for certain deficiencies that you found in your game. Whereas you have a sequence like the one he did against Colorado, pick up the shutout there. I think that's just a huge moment for him to be able to turn the page and just playoff instincts again.
Sniper in the chat said, I don't think you can say he's back until he has 6 or 7 games in a row looking like his former self. So far, we have 2. That's fair. That's fair. That's a fair take to have. I'm just telling you, as somebody who was saying earlier, hey, this guy, you just got to get him on a run. You've got to get him playing some games, and he's got to get his timing back. The only way to do that is by playing games. I think he's back. I think he is back. Okay. Let's get to Arun Srinivasan, who is brought to you by Pacific Toyota dealers, who want to tell you about the 100% electric Toyota BZ4X. The BZ4X is packed. There it is, with all the things you want in an SUV, like the room to fit all your family, friends, hockey bags, and whatever else you've got. And of course, the BZ4X is backed by the peace of mind. There's that word. Backed by the peace of mind that comes with knowing you're driving a Toyota. When you choose the BZ4X, you can get up to $6,500 in rebates and incentives, and now you can finance a 2025 BZ4X from 3.29% APR for 36 months. Visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. Okay, some Leafs questions are what we're going to ask to Arun Srinivasan, who is, of course, the managing editor of theleafsnation.com. Arun, thanks so much for doing this. How you doing today?
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I'm on like day 10 of the flu, but I'll battling through. Things are good. Leafs are on a 3-game winning streak, so yeah, things are good.
So tell us about this 3-game winning streak and the Leaf season as a whole, I guess. Like, what's gone right for them on this 3-game win streak, on the Western swing that they're on, and the season as a whole?
So, I mean, like a lot of this year has been about like sort of the identity shift with Craig Berube. I mean, last year this team led the NHL in 5 and 5 goals. This year they are, I think, in a tie for 15th prior to tonight's games. So really, I think Craig Berube sort of overhauled a lot of the Sheldon Keefe tactics, where the team used to be a lot of fun to watch. And frankly, a lot of the games that they've been pretty pragmatic hockey, but they've been a lot of fun to watch. They've been getting elite goaltending from Anthony Stolarz and Joseph Woll. Woll maybe not quite elite, but he's just certainly played like a number one, and maybe that looks a lot different when you've had some shaky years with Elias Samsonov in the past. But yeah, I mean, they look really good. I think for at least what's really worked well on this road trip, and I've written as much, is like they're breaking out of structure in the best way. Sometimes there's been this sort of strict adherence to north-south hockey at all costs, and they're dumping the puck in rather than retaining possession. I think you're finally beginning to see this team play off the rush a little bit more. I think William Nylander's embodied that all year. Like, he seemingly gets like a breakaway like every game. But they're playing out of structure a little bit better. And then, of course, Anthony Stolarz came back last night, and he was awesome. So that goes a long way. Morgan Rielly looks a lot better this week. That was one of the big storylines with the team. He's playing like a true NHL number 4, and that might be a little bit generous. But he's getting into the rush again. He's been paired back with Oliver Ekman-Larsson again. And he's really just playing instinctually. I think that's something some of these guys have talked about too, where, I talked to Bobby McMahon in December, and he was just like, at the start of the year, I think a lot of us were just like overthinking. I mean, I'm paraphrasing here, but he basically spoke to the idea that like they were learning a new system. They were so worried about making mistakes that they weren't playing instinctual hockey. And at the end of the day, like, hockey is a pretty reactive game. So that's really been like the main like sort of year-long takeaway. It's like adapting a new style, playing pragmatic hockey. And then, of course, the new additions have made a huge impact. Like, Chris Tanev's been awesome. He's been just as good as if not better. That's added a lot of stability. And there is a true shutdown pair with Chris Tanev and Jake McCabe there. So it's interesting in that sense, where Morgan Rielly was uncontested best defenseman on this team for years. Now he's probably the Leafs number 4. And then as for the forwards, I mean, there's been a ton of injuries to this team. I don't know what the man games loss is like, but it's got to be up there towards the top of the NHL. And they're finally sort of figuring out their optimized roster a little bit on this road trip. I don't know if it's going to be a playoff lineup, but they've separated Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, and that's been a big talking point. It seems to work well. As long as they keep Matthew Knies with Austin Matthews, like that 2-man game works. Matthew Knies is not nearly as effective without anyone else, so they really need that 2-man game to work. But yeah, it's been an interesting storyline in a lot of ways. I think there's a lot of paranoia about, oh God, here we go again. How does this, translate to the playoffs? And the truth of the matter is we don't know until the playoffs start. But this team has explosive scoring power. They've got Berube's defensive principles, locked in. This is about as close to as healthy as they're going to get. And we'll see what happens at the trade deadline to see if, like, what the final playoff roster looks like.
It's funny the way you're describing Craig Berube hockey sounds a lot like Rick Tocchet and some of the complaints that Canucks fans have had where, okay, they've got a bit of a defensive identity, but pretty sort of limited offensively. How has Oliver Ekman-Larsson looked in Toronto? I think we all knew Chris Tanev was going to fit in well, but OEL, a pretty substantial contract after one bounce back year in Florida. Is he living up to his contract?
I think he's living up to his contract. I think with OEL, there's just been a lot of variance on a game-by-game basis. Like, he started out the year pretty much like shooting and getting like shots in net, and then that sort of offensive inventiveness just dropped off a cliff after about game 10. He's finding a little bit more. He's playing 3 more minutes a game than he did with the Panthers. So yeah, I mean, I think there's been a lot of different situations been placed in. At first, they thought maybe he could be a power play quarterback. Simply just did not work. Now he's kind of like settled into a second pairing guy. I mean, him and Riley are both playing the number 4s. At least don't have a true number 3. So he's kind of like, they both have 2 4s there essentially. And he's been fine. I think, you know, he has a little bit of a mean streak, which I didn't realize. That to me, it seems like to be what stood out about him a little bit more. He has struggled in rush defense scenarios, and that is the one thing that Craig Berube has outlined a lot. Like, anytime you ask, like, well, what's wrong with the team or what the team needs to work on, is rush defense. And he, along with Morgan Riley, have struggled with rush defense scenarios. Like, he's getting beat to the outside quite a bit, but generally he plays with physicality. I forget which loss it was. The Leafs got pumped like earlier in the season, and he was irate. So I think like there is something to be said for like veteran leadership and intangible qualities. He's not like the headline player that he used to be, but if you look at him as like a second pair guy, you know, I don't know how sustainable it's going to be in the playoffs, you know, and I wonder if the Leafs get another defenseman, but he's playing like 21 minutes a game and it's been fine with the potential to be better. But yeah, the offensive qualities that you expect from OEL haven't been there. He's generally been pretty good in like stationary situations, but he really does struggle with rush defense at this stage of his career. So it really varies on a game-by-game basis, honestly. Like, when he's been with Chris Tanev, he's been great. When he's been with Morgan Riley, the results have been mixed. And he's been with Connor Timmins, he's been unplayable. So, I mean, it's been all over the place with OEL. And I kind of split the difference and look at him as like a net positive, especially given his experience with the Panthers last year.
As a whole, what's the vibe like in Toronto right now? Like, are Leafs fans at the stage where they're just like, okay, this is great, but who really cares? It matters what happens once the playoffs roll around.
Yeah, it's like guarded optimism mixed with paranoia, and like because this fan base is so wide spanning, it's like hard to sort of say if there's one emotion. So what I will say is, like, often you find the prevailing emotion is like, how does this translate to the playoffs, or does this even matter? Right? There's sort of almost this nihilism that's set in for some of the fan base. Where like last night they played well against the Kraken. The second period they got caved in a bit, but for the most part, control possession, controlled shot attempts, were the better team, and they're still like, well, how does this matter? So there's sort of this nihilism for the fans. So you sort of have to ignore that segment of the fan base while realizing, like, once April starts, like 30% of this fan base at minimum is coming back. For those who are paying attention to the team, it's kind of like, how does this translate to playoff hockey? Like, often when I go on Fan 590 for guest appearances, they're like, is this going to translate to playoffs? And I'm like, I don't know. I think so. Like, there is sort of the idea that playing defensively responsible hockey translates well to the playoffs, but like, that's not always true. Like, you do need to score goals at the end of the day too. So there's been that part of it too. I think there's been sort of the prevailing fear that the Leafs are still in division with the Florida Panthers, and no matter how well they play, Alexander Barkov and Sam Reinhart can lock up Austin Matthews in a heartbeat. So there is like this like guarded like paranoia. Like, they play great defensively. There's been a lot of like optimism about the goaltending. Like, the way Joe Woll and Anthony Stolarz have played, they've reinvigorated like some hope among the fan base where, this is clearly the best goaltending the Leafs have received in the Austin Matthews era. And I think that lends itself well to optimism. The other thing too is like Austin Matthews being out of the lineup for 15 games, like, it as a reporter, it was like nearly impossible to figure out. And maybe it's a deficiency of my reporting, guys, but honestly, just like trying to figure it out. Like, when he was made available in November, he looked great. Like, he looked like Austin Matthews. Like, and I've written as much too in practice reports. Like, he looks great. Then in December he comes back, he looks like himself. Then there's this mid-December stretch where he didn't look like himself, and then he's out again for another 6 games. He missed 9 games first sequence, 6 games another time. And then there was like, well, should the Leafs put him in LITR? Should they shut him down? He comes back on January 4th against the Boston Bruins, just tears it up, just leads to Matthew Knies' best game of his career by far. He's looked pretty much like the Austin Matthews we've come to expect. But, I mean, that storyline, like, dominated the first half of the year. Like, does Austin look like himself? Will he be back? Is this going to be a lingering issue? You know, I will say this with the Leafs. Like, they are pretty good and have been transparent with us. There's been, like, a looser vibe around the team. But their injury reporting is, like, impossible to parse through. And that has given some people some worry. And then, of course, you know, we have to get to Mitch Marner, who is just, like, he really is, like, a litmus test of how the fan base feels. And he's been great for the most part. I mean, he has not been anywhere close to Selke level. Like, you know, he does not, he shouldn't be anywhere near the Selke conversation this year, if you ask me. You know, he's been league average defensively, but then again, like, how much of that is a byproduct of him carrying the offensive load without Matthews for a large part of the year? You know, William Nylander scoring a bunch, but he also had an 8-game goal drought. You know, Nylander is probably the most, like, an inventive player, I'd say, on the team. So yeah, there's that part of it too. Now there are worries seeping in that 6 guys have accounted for 76% of the goals. Nylander, Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Matthew Knies has been a really good positive story. And then, of course, Bobby McMahon, who maybe is like the unsung hero, true breakout guy. He has like elite straight line speed. And he was the guy, like, yeah, again, trying to fit into Berube's system, right? Where like Bobby McMahon creates havoc off the rush. In stationary situations, he's not as effective. So that's been interesting to figure out. But yeah, there's a long-winded answer to say that the fan base is all over the place and waiting for April. And some of them are missing out on a pretty good regular season hockey team.
What should the Leafs do with Mitch Marner and his contract situation? I find it so funny that in a contract year, he's having arguably his most productive season of his career. We're seeing the price for elite players across the NHL is only rising. What should the Leafs do? Is this a case of you only pay him if he shows up in the playoffs? If he doesn't show up in the playoffs, would the Leafs really be willing to let him walk away? Actually, let me phrase it this way. I want to go down this hypothetical. Let's say Mitch Marner has another underwhelming playoff run. What should and what do you expect the Leafs to do? Do they double down and re-sign him because they say can't afford to lose this guy for nothing? Or do you think that this management staff has the stones to potentially cut bait and reallocate that cap space?
Oh, I mean, that's obviously like the $13 million question right here in Toronto, I guess, or whatever the case may be. I honestly don't know, Harman. That's a great question, and that is the question that dictates the Leafs' long-term perspectives. I tend to think that they are going to sign him. Like, I think it just for several reasons. I think one, I mean, and I think this is the main reason. Like, how often do you get a homegrown talent like Mitch Marner in your backyard, right? Like, I think it just sets a bad precedent for the rest of the league, right? Or for their future dealings. Like, if you're willing to let Mitch Marner walk for nothing, isn't anyone safe? Like, not to make it about the NBA, but like sort of like the Luka Doncic situation, right? It's like you're gonna just like let this guy like go for nothing. Like, you know, I think it just sets like a bad sort of negotiation precedent. The other thing too, and like I'll say this about Marner. Yeah, like he's been really good. I think last year he got a bit of a bad rap. You know, he was a primary defender on David Pastrnak, and no one talks about that. Like the amount of energy he had to expend to. I mean, Brad Marchand was the real killer in that series, but like he did a good job, like, you know, sort of locking down Pastrnak in that 7-game series. But of course, like that's not a fun talking point, and that gets sort of lost in the shuffle. Like he expended so much energy just effectively man marking Pastrnak in that series. So I think he's better than expected. But yeah, I mean, I think like it's like a wait and see type thing. I think the Leafs are going to get the deal done. I mean, Marner's not talking about the contract. He told us to start. He's like, this is it. I want to be with the Leafs. He's rated several times that he wants to be the Leafs. So there's no ambiguity on his part. Like he wants to get a deal done. But yeah, like I kind of find it like a little bit difficult too with a team with such institutional value and capital. Like it's not like the Leafs. I know we're in a salary cap world, but like they have the money to just let this guy go. I mean, it would seem baffling to me if they let him walk. I mean, I also don't think it's like there's been some reporting that like, oh, like does he want more money than Austin Matthews or William Nylander? Like truly, I don't think that's the case. I think he just wants to get paid commensurate to his value at some sort of fair price. But we'll see. Like, I can't imagine the Leafs letting him walk. That's just bad business. They either find like an unexpected Mikko Rantanen level trade for the deadline, or they get him signed. Like, letting him walk is untenable. So, but then again, like, I seem to be higher on Marner than a lot of people. There are a lot of fans who are fed up with his lack of playoff production. I suppose that's fair. But again, like, what do you want of this guy? You want, like, he plays in all situations. He's a top 5 in points this year. He is entering, or probably just firmly in the middle of his prime. Like, I have a tough time sort of entertaining the idea that let him walk. But what I do think it's going to be a wait and see. And if the Leafs make a deep run, if they make it past the second round, like, pay him what he wants. Like, I don't know. I tend to be on the side of, like, star players. You know, that's just my personal view of it. Like, if you have an issue, go to Marty Walsh. I don't know, like, what to say. Like, you know, like, pay guys like what they want. And like, what irks me about fans, guys, I don't know about you guys, and not to start like a war here, but it's just like, yeah, like, you spend all this time watching the Leafs, and then you have an issue with like a few decimal points. Who cares? Mitch Marner's worth the money. But that's my view of it. I understand that in a salary cap world, it's not always that easy, but I do think the cap going up definitely benefits the Leafs from a negotiating standpoint. So that's a long-winded answer to say that the Leafs should get a Marner deal done. And then from what's been reported and what we've seen, it seems by all indications he wants to stay. Now it's just a matter of getting that number in that term.
Arun, I love it. Thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and we'll touch base with you soon. Do the Canucks and Leafs play again this year, or is this the last one?
I think this might be it. By the way, guys, yeah, like, we're still having nightmares of Kevin Lankinen here in Toronto. What a game he had in.
Yeah, I wonder. I don't even know if he'll start tomorrow. We'll see.
Yeah,
Demko's on a bit of a heater right now.
He was awesome against the Leafs. He was so good.
Gotta get in that game.
See.
Love it.
Thanks.
Okay, Arun, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys.
There he is, Arun Srinivasan, the managing editor of the LeafsNation.com. Harman, I absolutely love your Marner question.
Well,
you were grinning ear to ear asking that question.
Well, it's a very plausible potential situation. I mean, Arun brought it up himself. Their top 6 scorers have accounted for 76% of all their goals. And so this is the same issue where, yes, the Leafs under Craig Berube, they're going to be defensively tighter, but that's not been their issue. Their issue in the playoffs has been they can't score. Now again, you have a team that is way too reliant on Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nyes to produce offense for you. Well, what happens in the playoffs if Matthews and Marner, as has been the precedent, go quiet again? They don't produce at an elite level. You're not going to get goals.
I will say, and Arun brings up a good point about the idea of your negotiating power, like, moving forward, all that stuff. Like, I understand that. But I also think it would be really easy for Brad Treliving to explain to the fan base, like, hey, you know what? We weren't going to trade him at the deadline because we wanted this team to have a chance with Craig Berube to have a playoff run. We weren't going to trade him at the deadline because we weren't going to do a Mikko Rantanen type deal. Wanted to see how it went. If the playoffs went good, it was our full intention to sign him. But the playoffs didn't go good, so we're not going to sign him. Like, I feel like that's something Brad Treliving could just tell the fan base, and they'd be like, okay, there'd obviously be people who disagree with it. But like Arun said, like, it feels like a lot of the fan base is just kind of done with that core when it comes to not performing in the playoffs. So we'll see. It's an interesting one to follow.
The problem, too, is I'm trying to remember before his, whether it's no movement clause or no trade clause, I think, when Kyle Dubas was still in charge, or maybe it was Treliving's first summer, like, they had an opportunity a couple summers ago where, like, that was the time to actually look into it. At this point, like, the rumors going back to last summer when they were kind of gauging or testing the market on Marner. Marner had full control of the situation, and they weren't going to be able to get full value. We'll see, but I think the hockey world would love to see another scenario where the Leafs. It's just always fun when the Leafs are melting down, when there's drama, especially when Mitch Marner's at the center of it.
People were dropping their jokes in the chat of his "we get treated like gods" quote. That one obviously is going to get a lot of play once again. All right, thanks again to Arun for joining us on today's show. Four Nations Face-Off. I want to tell you about it real quick because I want to tell you that Daily Face-Off Live, show hosted by Frank Cervelli and Tyler Remchuk, that crew is hitting the road and going live on location from Four Nations, bringing you exclusive coverage straight from the tournament from February 10th to 20th. They've got live shows every weekday breaking down the biggest stories, key matchups, and all the action as it unfolds. Don't miss a second. Subscribe to the Daily Faceoff YouTube channel and follow on all social platforms to stay locked in. They'll be bringing you insider analysis, on-the-ground coverage, and maybe even a little chaos because let's be real, it's international hockey. Daily Faceoff live on location from Four Nations, February 10th to 20th. I'm getting excited for Four Nations. Am I crazy?
I just hope Sidney Crosby's healthy.
Yeah,
Like, that's the one thing. But yeah, I'm excited to watch Four Nations.
I reported last night. It's an oblique injury for Quinn Hughes. I had it confirmed. Funny enough, like right after the game, I had it confirmed. So I tweeted it out, reported it. It is a oblique injury, and for those that are wondering, your oblique is like right here, and for those on the podcast, it's like your sides. Like if you said, "Oh, my sides hurt," that's what you're talking about is your obliques. It's
Near your abs.
Yeah, exactly. So it's an oblique injury for Quinn Hughes. Suffered it in the game against Dallas. Like the other thing that I was able to actually, I shouldn't say I can confirm this, but the thing that was suggested to me is like this is a new injury. This isn't something that he's been like dealing with all season, and oh, it just got re-aggravated. It was a new injury. A lot of things can cause it. There can be different timelines for a return of how long it's going to take you to get back. I will say one thing that I did see, and now that I know it's an oblique injury, it is interesting to notice this. When Quinn Hughes was out for a warm-up in the game against the Detroit Red Wings, one thing he was doing was he had his teammates lined up on the blue line, and he was skating forward and then skating backwards and making passes and really twisting his upper body and his lower body, working on those kind of breakout passes that he would be making. And then that was when he went to the bench to go talk to the trainer. So again, I'm just noting that because now that we know it's an oblique injury, it certainly is interesting to note that that is what I saw when I watched him warm up and test it to see if he was good to go. He was really twisting his midsection quite a bit. So I probably should have been able to guess that it was an oblique injury, but I didn't. I got it confirmed. Oblique injury for Quinn Hughes. So, and Ricochet in the chat said, I thought it was his hand and wrist. He does have a hand and wrist injury. He's still got the contraption on. He'll probably still have it on when he comes back, but he was playing through that, right? Like that wasn't something that was holding him out. And the injury that he's dealing with right now wasn't like his hand or wrist got worse. Just so everyone knows, like I said, it's oblique. That's the one that's keeping him out of the lineup. The hand and wrist is for sure not 100%, but like he was able to play, and he was able to play at a high level with it as well. He's been back from that for a while.
Yeah, it's like you mentioned, the obliques affect your ability to twist and turn with power and explosiveness. And for a player like Quinn, that in all three zones, on the breakout and in the offensive end, he likes to be explosive. He leans on his agility more so than his straight line north-south quickness to make maneuvers at the offensive blue line. That's a huge part of his game.
We also didn't get to the news of the day. Mark Friedman has been traded to the Nashville Predators for future considerations. It's our annual reminder, weekly, monthly, I don't know how often we say it, but it is a reminder that future considerations can mean anything, and that we've heard stories of general managers being like, okay, next time I'm in town, you just buy me dinner or whatever. And that's your future considerations, and the deal is completed. The deal is considered completed because you bought me a steak dinner. Do you think GMs could like disagree? It's like, oh no, you can't just buy me a Costco dog. Like you gotta take me to a steakhouse here.
It's got to be surf and turf, half lobster. Anything smaller than that doesn't count.
Other GM throws the menu across the table. Is like, Mark Friedman is not worth lobster.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say I don't think this type of deal is worth it. I imagine, and I know this wasn't an official future considerations thing, but how wild is it that the Rangers, Chris Drury, put Barclay Goodrow on waivers in the summer? Horrible contract. Like he's been unplayable this year. And his buddy Mike Greer off the Sharks claims him off waivers, just like takes on his contract. Like I know that's not a trade, but that's the type of thing where it's like,
I owe you
Chris
one.
Drury should be owing Mike Greer a lot of lobster dinners for that one.
Oh, that's great. How's Barkley Goudreau done since?
He's been awful. He's been
Huh.
awful. Like
Can you
below
chuck him?
replacement level.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Not good. Not good. -25. He's a -25 in 51 games with the Sharks this year. That's crazy.
He straight up just does not deserve an NHL lineup spot.
That's crazy. That's insane. Okay. Let's get to anyone else. I've got a few things I want to talk about. Let's get to anyone else, which is brought to you by our friends over at Greta, a great spot for all games, home and away, the home of our electric watch parties. We hope to see you all season long. But even if we're not there, you certainly should be. Just minutes from the arena. Come by before and after the game or whatever event you're downtown for with arcade games, weekly drink specials, and the recently updated street food menu. Greta Bar YVR is the place to be. 50 West Cordova Street is the address. Let the games begin. Okay, Harm, I've got a few things that I wanted to talk about. The first of which is Pettersson. I want to talk about Pettersson again. Do you... And you played sports growing up. Do you buy into the theory that he's maybe just in his own head a bit? Like maybe he just has the yips a little bit? That maybe he's just so in his head, and maybe, like I said, it started with a knee thing, but now he's so in his head that he just can't possibly get it back on the rails because it's one of those things. And I don't know, have you ever had the yips? I had it at the plate one time during baseball.
I don't think I've had it to that extent, but considering the circumstances and the level of pressure on him and just knowing him as a personality type, I buy it as a theory. And like not the main theory, but like contributing to his struggles, absolutely.
I went like 3 months without a hit. And
Wow.
I was striking out and I was trying to work on the tee. I was doing what Patrick Alvin and Rick Tocchet would tell me to and work harder in practice. I was doing everything I could, and I just could not get over it. I couldn't figure it out. And now I wasn't the best baseball player growing up. That's why I'm doing this. But it was not normal for me to not be able to make contact with the ball. And it was 3 months of that. Like I was a contact hitter, and I could not make contact. I was working on trying my best to do everything I could. And the only thing that worked for me was just like had an off season and said, okay, I'm just not going to worry about it. I'll just come back, start up next year, and hopefully be good. Now, of course, I was not a professional athlete dealing with this, right? Like, not nearly the same thing, but I'm saying from my experience, like, that was what I would describe as the yips, where it was just like, I didn't know what was going on. Nobody could help me. I felt alone. I couldn't figure it out. And it was like 3 months, which, again, is like most of the season in youth baseball. Most of the season was really, really bad, and that really sucked. And I wondered if maybe Pettersson's going through that. Someone said Jason Bruff brought this up on 650 today. Did you hear this? Did you hear?
No,
Bruff?
I didn't hear it.
I didn't either, but apparently Bruff brought it up. So I'm not the only one, apparently, to have this idea that maybe he's just going through the yips. And I shouldn't even say just going through the yips because it sucks. And now it's been a full year. The offseason thing that worked for young Dave isn't working for Pettersson.
He looks like a player that doesn't trust himself to do anything right now, whether it's taking defenders on a one-on-one, whether it's his shot, even protecting the puck. It's so... Like when Pettersson has the puck down low in the offensive zone or along the wall, especially on the power play, or he needs to make a pass under pressure, I don't have it. It's like a 50-50 on whether he's actually going to keep it or turn it over, which with the skill set that he has, even if he is, let's say, playing through a knee tendonitis issue, he shouldn't be having issues protecting the puck or making or making simple passes that he clearly has the elite skill to connect on.
People in the chat are commenting a lot on me bringing up my yips. The Beer Baron, you should have asked for 11.6 quads. And the way he wrote it, he didn't specify million. So yeah, I maybe could have asked for $11.60. Amina A brought this up too. She said, why didn't the Canucks hire a sports psychologist? Like, they've got people, they've got resources, and that's the thing is, I don't know what the answer is to this. And again, mental blocks, it's totally different sometimes. And Rico Shea in the chat saying, well, he's not doing anything to fix it. again, like, we don't know that. We don't know if Elias Pettersson's done nothing to fix it. He's probably feeling, like I said, he's probably feeling pretty alone right now, if that's what he's going through. LC250 said quad situation is different. Yeah, just a little bit. Professional athletes have some of the best doctors, physiotherapists, chiropractors, trainers. Different situation. Yes, it is a different situation, but at the end of the day, it is still this idea. And again, this is just a theory, and I'm saying this could all be baked in with the knee that I brought up earlier as well. Like, sometimes you just can't get through it. Sometimes it's really hard. And who's the baseball player? There was a baseball player that's career ended because of the yips. Like, just straight up ended, Harm.
There's multiple golfers whose careers
No,
ended.
Jacob, who's the one that was like 28 years old? Who am I thinking
Wasn't
of?
it Rick Ankiel, the pitcher?
Yes.
And then he had the yips, and he came back like 3 or 4 years later as an outfielder for a couple of years.
Yes. Yeah, Rick
I have
Ankiel.
no idea who this guy is.
Jacob, give me Rick Ankiel info right now.
So Rick Ankiel, just pulling up his stature. He's debuted like right around the turn of the millennium, like 99, 2000, pitched for a few years, and then ran into the yips. And
when you're a pitcher, you can't control the ball.
Yeah,
when
so
you have the
he pitched in the majors for a couple of years, and then his ERA skyrocketed. He had Tommy John surgery, just a bunch of stuff that went on with him. He couldn't pitch, and then he essentially said, "Yeah, like I'm gonna retire as a pitcher and go back into the minors and try and come back as a position player instead." And he came back as an outfielder, and he could like absolutely throw a cannon from the outfield. Like he was throwing the ball from like 250 feet in center field, dead into the catcher's glove at home plate, but he couldn't do it from the mound.
So, Elias Pettersson's played goalie before. Is that what you're telling me, Jacob? That's the cure? Switch him to goalie.
Give him absolutely not what I said.
Just transition him to the Igor Shesterkin contract. Arun is still in the chat, and he said Chuck Knoblaw. That was another guy I was thinking of. Yankees, he play second or short? Second base. Yeah, and he just couldn't make a throw to first base. Like, he could not throw the ball to first base. And again, that's another one where the career just ended. And I'm not sitting here saying, oh, Elias Pettersson's career's over. But I am saying, like, this could be what he's going through, and it is a thing. Like, it is a thing to have that kind of mental roadblock. Because personally, I don't buy that it's just the knee. I am willing to say that he's probably dealing with that still, and that it maybe maybe contributed to the struggles that he's having right now. But it's not all the knee. It can't be. It just can't be at this juncture with what we're seeing. And it's like you said, Harm.
Well, even when he's struggled in the past, he's had moments where his confidence just falls off a cliff. Mm-hmm. Even going back to, let's say, the 56 game shortened season where the wrist ended up being an issue, and he was out for the second half of the season. I remember watching him through the first 10 games, and even in hindsight, knowing the context that he had a wrist injury, it was so clearly an issue in his head too, like some type of mental block, where there was a point where Canucks defenseman on the breakout, even when Pettersson was open, wouldn't give him the puck because Pettersson was that nervous carrying the puck through the neutral zone. It wasn't your typical, oh, this guy's going through a 10 or 15 game slump. It was, this guy kind of looks like he's forgotten how to play hockey.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't the first time that it's potentially happened where, whether you want to call it the yips, confidence, swagger, like something there outside of just the physical characteristics that is affecting his ability to perform at a high level.
Okay, I have to get to this because I've seen this. And nobody's ever brought it up on the show, but I've seen it on social media, and I don't go to my way to reply to people on social media. But Connor_G on Instagram left this comment. He said, when Henrik Sedin was Petey's age, he scored 18 goals. Daniel scored 22. That's fantastic. That was a different era of hockey. And also, the Sedins were late bloomers. Neither of them had a 100-point season before that. Like, this is the context that matters. And I'm not just trying to pick on Connor. Connor, thanks for watching the show. But, like, we've seen it throughout. Like, we've seen that argument come up where it's like, well, look what happened to the Sedins. It's like totally different era where it was harder for young players to succeed. And you had these guys in the Sedins who played on the third line for their first few years, eventually worked their way up and got to that star level. Pettersson was at that star level right away. Like, that's the concerning thing, is that what's changed in that time, and is there a reason to think that, like, they're just not comparable situations? That's all it comes down to.
It's also totally different contracts.
Yeah.
We're living in a salary cap world. Steens weren't making 11.6 million when they were like 20 goal scorers before they truly broken out as elite players.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. What else do we have here? Yeah, this is interesting. This one on Hughes, okay? Because we were just talking about him in the oblique injury. This one from Kumsamolski. Nailed it. In the YouTube chat, he said, should the Canucks force Hughes to sit out of the Four Nations tournament? It may put his health on jeopardy for the rest of the season if he plays. We touched on this yesterday as well. But Patrick Allvin told Ian McIntyre of Sportsnet that they're hopeful that Hughes can play Saturday against the Leafs, and that Four Nations is going to be his call. He goes on to say that they trust Hughes to know his own body and to make the right decision. And obviously, Tocchet spoke about it as well, talking about knowing what's at stake as well. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, Hughes needs to miss the Four Nations tournament. Like, he wants to represent USA. I get it. So I'm not going to sit here and say, yeah, no, he needs to miss it. The Canucks should force him. The Canucks don't feel like they need to force him to miss it. So I'm not going to come out here and say anything else.
It's also just he's done everything for this organization, and
yeah,
I trust his judgment, but also like he doesn't owe it to the Canucks, where if he feels he's healthy enough to play, he shouldn't have to sit out just because the organization is potentially hesitant about it, which they don't seem to be at this stage. They're leaving the call in his hands.
Okay. Do we have anything else in the chat that I'm missing? I don't think so. We talked about the future considerations. Oh yeah, did you see this? Connor Bedard was catching some heat from Paul Bissonnette on the TNT broadcast for playing what Biz said was pond hockey and not playing much defense, going for individual efforts. I thought it was very justified criticism of Bedard. I also think Bedard is a symptom of being on a team that their season was over like on October 18th. So like what are you asking the kid to do? He's 19 years old. Again, I don't know. Did you have a take on this? Because it was bizarre to me that people were so mad at Biz about it. It's like you're allowed to criticize players when they play like that, but also let's take into some context that Connor Bedard's basically trapped in Chicago. Free him.
Yeah, I thought it was fair analysis by Biz. I didn't like the people who were screenshotting Biz's NHL career stats and laughing at him. It's argue the point. Don't attack the character of the guy making the point. Biz is paid to give his opinion on games, and it's not like he was just spouting off. He was breaking down film and walking through the specific clips and examples. He didn't just flippantly say, "Oh, he's playing pond hockey,"
yeah,
and
exactly.
ripping Bedard. I also think the rest of the people on the panel, Anson Carter and Henrik Lundqvist, did a really good job of contextualizing the situation where, yeah, Biz came in with some heat and was critical of Bedard's turnovers, which, by the way, looking at some of the clips, it was, yeah, there are a lot of hope plays there. But then Lundqvist brought up the point that you were sort of alluding to about how it's really hard for players when their season's already over and they have no chance of making the playoffs to buy into to play with such tight habits and in details. And Carter brought up his age and he'll learn it. And this is, typical growing pains. I thought overall that was a great segment for the TNT broadcast intermission panel. Yeah,
I absolutely agree. I think the criticism is valid. I also think let's take into the context that Connor Bedard's in a really bad situation in Chicago. Pat Maroon actually was on Morning Cup of Hockey. Johnny Lazarus was on the show on Monday. That is Johnny's show with Colby Cohen over on Daily Faceoff. Pat Maroon was on Morning Cup of Hockey, and he had some really interesting things to say about that whole thing. And like, he basically said what I just said, where it's like he's a 19-year-old kid. Like, he's going to try to make plays. Do we want him to do it every shift? No, but I really liked what I actually heard from Pat Maroon on that clip. It was on Morning Cup of Hockey. I think they had him on Tuesday. Yes, Tuesday. I really liked what I heard.
And I had nothing. I have nothing to complain about with Bedard's reaction as well. He was asked about it, and that clip sort of went viral. I agree with Bedard that he shouldn't really care what outsiders are saying. He should simply focus on his own game, the feedback that the coaching staff is giving him. He acknowledged that he knows when he's not playing up to his ability.
Exactly.
And
that was the
he's
thing I
making
liked.
mistakes.
It's not like, oh, the media is just being
I
crazy.
thought all around, I thought the TNT panel's analysis was good. I thought Bedard's reaction was positive and was mature. The only thing I didn't like was people, rather than actually applying some critical thinking and watching the full clip and if you disagree and think they were too harsh on Bedard, argue the point, not just attacking Biz's hockey DB. I thought that was lazy, and I thought it was unfair considering, again, it's not as if the TNT broadcast was just calling it out as pond hockey without actually bringing up examples and breaking down clips.
Speaking of pond hockey, I think I brought this up, but I'm going up north next week, and I'm very excited because it's like -20 up there right now, and I'm gonna get to skate on a lake. I didn't get to skate on a lake this year. I mentioned I skated on Trout Lake last year. That is one of the cool. Have you ever done that? Skated on?
I haven't had a chance to.
It is one of the coolest experiences. You feel so free. It's amazing. It's an amazing experience. You got to do it, Harm. You got to do it. I'm going to do it next week. I'm very excited. Hey, Jacob, how often are you supposed to get skates sharpened?
Depends. Like if you're playing hockey every 2 periods, if you're just skating outdoors on a lake, it doesn't matter. You could probably use dull skates and it really wouldn't change things.
Perfect. I was trying to figure out if I needed to go get that done, but I don't think I
It's preference. Dull skates aren't fun to skate with, but like when you're outside just skating around, it's not a big deal. It's easier if they're a little sharper, but
would sharp skates help me stop better? Because I can't stop properly.
Probably not.
Okay.
Sharp skates you'd skate faster but they actually would probably make it a little bit harder to stop.
Okay, because I got wheels already, so. I got my tape right here, actually. Tape my new sticks. Yeah, I'm excited. Okay.
NHL Edge top 5th percentile. David Quadrelli.
Haven't you seen me flying at Rogers Arena? Were you at any of the media skates?
No, I wasn't.
Oh. I fly. I'm fast. I'll be honest. Not to toot my own horn. I am fast in a straight line. I am somewhere between, like, you know, the Timbits minor hockey players in the intermission?
Yeah.
Like the fastest kid you've ever seen there and Noah Juleson. I'm somewhere in between there.
Wow, thanks for really narrowing that range down.
No,
I'm somewhere in between a 6-year-old and a professional NHL player.
No. Noah Juleson.
Yeah, who is an NHL player.
And in all seriousness, as much as we dump on Juleson and the people dumping on Biz, that's the other thing that you and I were talking about this yesterday. Like, think of the best beer leaguer or the best player you've ever met or played with in person that didn't play in the AHL or the NHL. Like, Noah Juleson could skate circles around all of you. Like, the difference between... What was the quote? It was like, the difference between a...
Juleson is closer to Gretzky than we are to
Exactly.
Juleson.
Exactly. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly it.
I was playing beer league hockey as a goalie a couple years ago, and we went up against a team who had a former WHL 4th liner. This guy played in the 4th line in the dub for like 2 years, played some junior A on like a 2nd line, and he lit me up for 4 goals and 3 assists. We lost 7-6.
Oh, that's the other thing. So another story. When I played high school ball hockey, I was a goalie in that. We had a guy, but you can look up his DB page, so I'll say his name, by the name of Nick Holoko, who was a great guy, and he went to my high school, and he played for he had a very, very short stint. No, not short stint. He didn't play a ton, didn't light up the WHL on fire. He played in the WHL, played 3 games for the Coquitlam Express. he was our best player and the best player in the league by such a wide margin. Like, he was just he couldn't make every game because he had to go play in the WHL, and that hurt our team so badly. And then whenever he would show up, we lost a lot of games, but we would win any game he was in because we would just give him the ball and he would just stick handle everybody. He was so much better than everybody. Anyways, it was really, really funny bringing that up, the idea of Noah Juleson taking on like beer leaguers. Like, I'm sorry, but he would skate circles around all of you. But anyways, okay. Anything else you guys wanted to get to?
Jacob saying Karen Versation really wants you to comment on Noah Dobson.
Nobody knows what's going through Lou Lamoriello's head, and I've never heard of the source of that report that came out today. So I will say that those are rumors. But yes, if Noah Dobson's available, fire up the trade simulator, go get him. Like, yeah, go get Noah Dobson. I don't think he's actually available.
We'll see. I don't think so either, but given Dobson's contract situation and him potentially being a $9-10 million defenseman, like, that's where the issue comes, right? That's why teams are often forced to make tough decisions. It's not so much that they give up on a player, it's how much do we like this player relative to how expensive his next contract is going to be. I also think from a Canucks perspective, I wouldn't really be... I don't know if I love the idea of going all in on Dobson now that you have Hughes, Hronek, and Marcus Pettersson. You're so thin up front as far as impact, top of the lineup difference makers, especially if the management group doesn't plan on re-signing Brock Besser. That do you want to be giving up more of your best assets for another defenseman when you really, really need another star or two up front?
Fair. I don't think it makes sense for a few reasons. Again, we'd have to fire up the trade simulator to be sure about it. Don't think it's going to happen. Think that's fair to say. Everyone wants Dobson. Don't think it's going to happen. But Conversation says this is the analysis I wanted. Thanks, gents. Okay, cool. Wasn't sure if that was the answer you wanted to hear, but we gave it to you anyways. Let's get to our Bet365 bet of the day. Oh, man, that's 2 straight losses. I didn't like the slate last night, I'll be honest. I didn't like it. Didn't like that I had to make a bet on that slate, but I do like making one tonight. Tonight, we have got... Ooh, here's an interesting one. Okay, so the Pittsburgh Penguins are visiting the New York Rangers. Okay, they don't have Sidney Crosby in the lineup. Let's move on. Let's go to Colorado, Edmonton. I'm sticking with underdogs. I'm going to take the Avalanche that are visiting Edmonton. The Avalanche are going to be looking to bounce back, obviously. Tough loss to the Canucks. Avalanche looking to bounce back. Let's take them to beat the Edmonton Oilers.
I'm just going to stop you right here. So Colorado's playing second half of back-to-backs, and their backup goalie right now is Trent Miner, who's like a bad AHL goalie.
Excuse me, Trent Miner, Vancouver
former
Giants
Vancouver
legend.
Giant. I'm just going to caution you that it might get ugly for Colorado tonight.
Trent Miner shutout. Heard it here first. Yeah, plus 160. Hammer it. Don't listen to Jacob.
McKinnon and Nate just hammered your Wagon Flames.
Yeah, and they're gonna look to do it again. What was the score of the game last night?
I don't remember the final score, but Nate just had like 3 points. McKinnon had like 3 points.
Final thing for me, I watched Coast to Coast again last night. Amazon Coast to Coast. Ovechkin, goals in 4 straight games, down to 16. I think he's left to go. Unreal. Love to see it. Okay. What was the bet? Plus 160. Moneyline Colorado taking on Edmonton. That was our bet of the day, brought to you by Bet365, proud partner of Canucks Conversation. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment is, never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code NATION when you sign up for an account. Must be 19 plus to play. If you choose to play, please play responsibly. All right, go Trent Miner. Go Avs. We'll close it out there. For you know what? No, we won't. Because you know what we didn't talk about at all, Harm? Was the Canucks have passed the Calgary Flames in a playoff spot now. We didn't talk about that in the standings. The Flames are scuffling.
Yeah, I mean, Woo, you passed the Calgary Flames on
Well-
February 7th.
Well, they had ground to make up.
Massive
and they've done it.
accomplishment. This is exactly the big moment of celebration all Canucks fans expected before the season started. Is they finally passed the Calgary Flames to reclaim wildcard 2.
Wow. I was not expecting that reaction. I thought you would want to talk about it, but no problem. Screw me, I guess. Whatever. No problem. Okay.
I mean, it's good. Look, they need to make the playoffs. It'd be kind of disastrous if they allow Calgary to get in, and not just because I'd owe you a Pirate Pack bet. But yeah, I mean, I'm like, okay, cool. They should have passed Calgary like 2 months ago.
Super Bowl prediction, quick. Sino Chick is asking. I don't watch much football, but it looks like the Chiefs are going to win, and that the NFL really wants the Chiefs to win. So I'm going to say Chiefs.
Hard to bet against Mahomes. I'm not an NFL guy either. I like Philly and the Eagles just because I had fun in Philadelphia once. But hard to bet against Mahomes.
Harm, I'll correct you on that. Hard to bet against the Kansas City defense. They are so good. Mahomes has been like pretty average all year, but I still think it'll be the Chiefs.
Whatever, Jacob. Oh my gosh. I've been hearing it all year long from you, Clark Coruscant, who writes the show articles over at Canucks Army, Tyson Cole, everybody who like actually likes and watches football keeps telling me like, oh, the Chiefs are frauds. The Chiefs are a Mickey Mouse 13-1 team. Whatever.
They were, but they have an unbelievable defense.
So that's part of the team.
It sure is, but like, the credit going to Mahomes for this championship run is ridiculous. That would be like, this is a slight exaggeration. That would be like if the Canucks somehow go on a deep playoff run and everyone's like, yeah, you know what? Elias Pettersson, he had 8 points in 19 playoff games. He's the reason that they did this.
No, it's not. It would be Demko. It's your goalie and your quarterback are your most important players. That's what it would be if Demko played. Oh, here's one. Artur Shilov's kind of average in the playoffs last year, but had some really big moments, and that's the story of last year's playoffs. That's how it works.
And the Vancouver Canucks won the Stanley Cup last year?
No, okay. Anyways, we don't need to keep doing this. This one was a comment. The playoff race is all that matters right now. You kids are wild. And then Ricochet said, celebrate that mediocrity right below it. I like it.
I mean, look, even at rock bottom, when I was saying blow up this core, they aren't doing it. I was still saying I expect them to make the playoffs. Like, that's the bare minimum. I'm not going to celebrate the bare minimum. Like, that was like, you got 2 years after this one with Quinn Hughes at under 8 million. You know how disastrous it'd be if you missed the playoffs? And I'm not saying this from a perspective of, oh, that means you have to be buyers, but like, come on, we can't celebrate making the playoffs when you have Quinn Hughes operating at a Hart Trophy level, making less than $8 million against a cap. The expectations this year were for Vancouver to be cup contenders.
The people that I called out were watching the show and they're all in the chat now. Tyson Cole saying, go Birds. Clark Coruscant, who I'm supposed to talk to Clark. Was supposed to talk to Clark at 3. We've gone overtime. I apologize, Clark. I'll be there soon. But Clark said, I'm catching strays. Yes, you and Tyson. Because, look, I don't know football, and I'm upfront about that with these guys. And then, I'm like, who do you like in this game? And it's, oh, no, this is the end of the road for the Chiefs. Okay, fellas. Sure. Anyways.
Me and you are like the uninformed Facebook uncles.
That's right. Go Mahomes, baby. That's my dog. Okay. You can win. You can win with guys like Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. Can't win with guys like Jalen Hurts
or Saquon Barkley, the best running back.
Oh, I like Saquon Barkley. I'll say this: I love me some Saquon Barkley. Because I haven't watched in the playoffs. I love Saquon Barkley also because he stuck it to the New York Giants. I think that's so funny. The whole story with Saquon Barkley. I like Saquon Barkley. I'm pulling for Saquon, but I think we're looking at Chiefs win. Okay. Want to close it out?
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
We'll close it out there. For my co-host Harman Dial, our technical producer Jacob Lazar. Our thanks again to Arun Srinivasan for joining us for today's show. We'll be back on Monday to break down the game against the Leafs. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.